Right, let's get into some of the news. The fake news, this time in London, has paid a heavy price. The London's Daily Telegraph has had to publicly apologise to First Lady Melania Trump on Saturday, and it has said that they've agreed to pay her substantial damages for publishing false statements regarding her family and also her modelling career. That's not the first. There's quite a number of references to the portal people, mainstream media, fake newspapers, etc. this week. And President Trump warned Saturday there could be more layoffs at media companies after BuzzFeed and the Huffington Post. You'll be surprised who owns that. Cut staff this week, saying fake news and bad journalism have led to a big turn down, and it's having a big effect. And the axe falls quickly at BuzzFeed and the Huffington Post, which was the headline in the New York Post. They won't last long either. And Trump stated that many others are expected to follow. The people want the truth, he said. And layoffs hit several news outlets this week, resulting in the loss of roughly 1,000 jobs in the media industry. BuzzFeed cut about 15% of its workforce, or more than 200 employees. And Verizon, which owns Huffington Post, Yahoo and AOL, said it would be slashing 7% of its workers in its digital media operations, or roughly 800 jobs. Not looking good for them, is it? Now, according to the portal people, the Russia investigation snared another associate of Donald Trump, which is not correct, with the arrest of the self-described political dirty trickster, their words, not mine, Roger Stone. The charges brought by Special Counsel Robert Mueller reveal new details about how the Trump campaign sought to benefit from the release of hacked material which was damaging to Hillary Clinton. You don't need hacking to realise there's enough material that's damaging to Hillary Clinton. Dear me. Just as as a side note, just as that so-called investigation was coming to an end, according to the portal people, they're going to arrest someone else to go down another side street and delay it even further. That's how it works. But they don't answer the key question in the Russian probe. Did Trump campaign organised with Russia's efforts to sway the 2016 election? The answer is no. And even if it was, who cares, given the CIA has interfered in 61 elections since World War II? If it's good for one, it's good for another, isn't it? Now, some takeaways from the indictment against Stone, who was arrested last Friday. He's being accused of lying to Congress, obstructing the House Intelligence Committee's Russia investigation. Perhaps we should charge Mueller then, and Comey and Page and Strzok. Witness tampering, same again. And the charges stem from what prosecutors say were Stone's efforts to conceal the nature of his discussions during the 2016 election via WikiLeaks, the anti-secrecy group that released thousands of emails allegedly stolen anyway, from the Democratic National Committee and the Clinton campaign chairman and pedophile John Podesta. US intelligence agencies and Mueller's investigators have said Russia was the source of that hacked material. Yeah, right. And they've accused him of lying in his testimony in September of 2017. Really, it took them 15 months to realise that. And They say he also falsely claimed he didn't have documents requested by the committee when he did, and he's accused of corruptly persuading one of his associates, the New York radio host Randy Credico, not to testify before the House Intelligence Committee in an effort to conceal, according to them anyway, Stone's false statements. This was a story that didn't get any coverage in the media, and it's no surprise, is it? The America and the Taliban are closing in on a deal to end America's longest war after 6 days of some of the most serious Afghan peace negotiations to date wrapped up last Saturday. Did anyone hear about it? No. Talking about peace, you see. And the talks in Doha, Qatar, lasted much longer than planned and longer than any previous attempt to end the 17-year poppy field conflict. And both sides publicly reported progress, which is a rarity. Now, the chief American negotiator, Zalmay Khalilzad, that the talks are more productive than they have been in the past, and he hopes they would resume shortly. His comments suggested that the key sticking points were the terms of a Taliban ceasefire and getting the insurgents to give up on their long-standing refusal to speak to the Afghan government, which they derided as an American puppet. Go figure. Still, this is actually the first time in 9 years of intermittent peace efforts that all sides seemed serious about reaching a deal in the first phase. And this would exchange a Taliban ceasefire for a phased withdrawal of all American forces. So this is negating North Korea. This is a pulling out in Syria, and now a pulling out in Afghanistan. And yet the media won't say nothing. Is it not an achievement, regardless of the personality of who's the president, that suddenly this country is not at war in 3 places? Not according to the media. And the Taliban would also pledge not to allow international terror groups to use Afghanistan as a launching pad for attacks against the United States. Then the Afghans and the Taliban would need to detail exactly what the peace will look like in terms of the Taliban sharing power in the government, and also how that might affect an array of other issues, such as the status of women in the country. I also wonder if Pelosi was there to block that deal as well. Oh, the timing. Now, following on from Ms. Cortez, in jumps another opportunist, Senator Elizabeth Warren, who is now making a big move on taxes. Funny that, isn't it? The trust does a full revamp of the taxes, and then these two people start mouthing off about let's tax these people and let's tax those people. Not a coincidence. As she seeks to stand out in a crowded Democratic presidential primary field where many candidates will be competing to win over progressive voters. I don't think so. The senator who recently announced an exploratory committee for president is calling for a special annual tax for those with a net worth that exceeds $50 million. And the proposal quickly caught the attention of progressives who praised Warren for floating taxes as a way to tackle wealth inequality. Now, the University of California economics professors Emmanuel Sayers and Gabriel Zuckman told Warren that the tax would raise about $2.75 trillion over 10 years, and that's the kind of money where we could pay for childcare, high quality childcare for all of our kids. Yeah, like you're interested before. And Ms. Warren said it's the kind of money where we could do real relief on student loan debt. Seeing the pattern now. Oh my. But you just wonder why all of a sudden these high profile people have an interest in taxation. And the gist of it is it's a ploy to get people to do a rearranging of the decks at the IRS. And in essence, keep the same Lucian system. Not to revamp it into an American-based government-controlled agency with actual oversight. No. They want to keep the same system with the income tax, and we'll give the illusion that we're taxing the higher earners. Because you know full well they'll have loopholes that are not accessible to the average person. That's what they're doing. They're pushing where they'll give you one thing with one hand and take it away with the other. Ignore these clowns. NBC's Tom Brakow on Sunday had to apologise for saying earlier in the day that Hispanics should work harder at assimilation. During a conversation about xenophobia in the US, Brakow tweeted his apology after he was criticised by some lawmakers and activists over his comment. Republican Joaquin Castro called it ignorant, and he said the Hispanics people were offended by that. Well, personally, I don't see what's wrong with that. You know, as a foreign national, I had to work at assimilation into the American culture. So why are Hispanics or Africans or anybody else for that matter any different? I don't see what was wrong at what he said. There's a lot of people who have been here numbers of years and they don't understand the national language. That's not right. You know, if you move to a foreign country, you at least attempt to learn that language and understand that culture. You know, I didn't come to America to create mini Britain. If I wanted mini Britain, I would have stayed there. You know, the things people get offended over these days, it's beyond a joke. American authorities revealed Monday that they had filed 13 felony charges against a Chinese telecom giant and one of its top executives who has been detained in Canada. Now, it's a move that I know for a fact has raised certain tensions between Washington and Beijing, but it's a bit outside the government, as we know and have said before. But federal prosecutors in Brooklyn brought the charges against Huawei and its chief financial officer Meng Wanzhou, and they who has been in Canadian custody since last month. Now, Huawei's affiliates Skyrim and Huawei Device USA were also included in the indictment, unsealed earlier on Monday in Brooklyn. Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker said the misconduct goes all the way to the top of the company, and Meng, who is being detained by Canadian authorities in Vancouver, is charged with bank fraud, wire fraud, and related conspiracy counts. For those of you who don't know, Meng is the daughter of the Huawei founder. I'm not pronouncing that. Zheng Fei. Sorry. I tried. We will have more on Venezuela later, but the US claims of defending democracy worldwide, according to a Russian report this week, are nothing but an attempt to control and make profits from natural resources, and I agree. And as Venezuela has the largest oil reserves, they're suggesting that Trump wants those to be taken over by American companies. Now, the US has been ramping up its regime change strategy towards Venezuela, both directly and through its right-wing proxies in the country and region. and this is to coincide with the recent inauguration of Nicolas Maduro as president, and the thrust of the US strategy is to delegitimize the presidency of Mr. Maduro and secure what it calls an orderly transition to a new government. Now, Mr. Maduro won last year's presidential election with 68% of the votes, with some opposition parties taking part and others choosing to boycott the poll of their own accord. Now, international observers, including the representative from the Council of Electoral Experts from Latin America, confirmed the reliability of Venezuela's election system. Now, 5 days before the swearing in, the US State Department issued a statement attacking what it called the corrupt and authoritarian Maduro regime, and it went on to declare that the National Assembly is the only legitimate and last remaining democratically elected institution that truly represents the will of the Venezuelan people. Now, the day after the inauguration, Juan Guaido, the National Assembly's new president, refused to recognize Maduro as the new president of Venezuela. Instead, he offered himself as an interim president. I will have full details of what is really going on in Venezuela in the Intel or op-ed pieces. 14 minors this week were among nearly 50 victims of human trafficking that were rescued during a sting operation across California that netted 339 arrests. Now, some of the victims found by law enforcement were as young as 13, while other cases involved children as young as 6. Now, Los Angeles County Sheriff officials said that during a news conference alongside other authorities, 93 human trafficking task forces and teams from various counties were part of the 3-day sting operation. Now, among those arrested during Operation Reclaim and Rebuild were pimps who had put victims up for sale and individuals soliciting sex from underage teens, according to the sheriff. Now, some of those saved from the underground world of sex trafficking were runaways or victims found through social media and chat sites online. So that's 339 less pedophiles and who can interfere with the children. There's a lot more of that going on, not only in America but globally. You know, some of these operations are planned for months, where they're scouting out who's who and what's what and who's connected. Ideally, when you want to get to a point where you want to collect the ringleaders rather than the minions, a bit like a drug bust. But it is going on right across the country. TikTok for those people. Public records have now revealed, and this guy should be thrown out straight away, that the Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, who endorsed infanticide as a form of abortion on Wednesday, has received almost $2 million in campaign contributions from Planned Parenthood. Now, the research reveals nearly $2 million in campaign contributions from the taxpayer-funded pro-abortion group Planned Parenthood was sent to Northam, who endorsed a bill that would allow new mothers to determine whether they wanted to keep a child after delivery, and essentially legalising infanticide. Excuse me. Now, Northrop received $1.996 million over the course of 5 years, with most of the donations coming during his 2017 election campaign. There were massive cash injections of $339,000, $278,000 and $256,000, and other similar amounts in the final days before the election. Planned Parenthood claims it's a women's health clinic focusing on prenatal care, but an author claims it admitted last year that it is paid to do abortions.